This is the Lattice Training Podcast, where we bring you the best in climbing performance and training from the world's elite athletes, thought leaders, and coaches.
I think my entire labor experience was 6 hours. So it all happened very fast. But as a result, it was like from 0 to 100, like incredibly painful.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it was a very normal birth experience. I did have some tearing, so I had stitches. But otherwise it was pretty just, I don't know, basic average birth experience.
Yeah, sure.
Very average size baby.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Cool. And so when you returned to kind of like that initial postpartum period, what did that look like for you in terms of like returning to climbing and also skiing and things like that? Was there like a long period of time where you were just focused on kind of the basics of recovery before going back to sport specific stuff, or did you go back quite quickly? How did that look like? What did that look like for you?
I mean, I tried to be patient and I tried to, be gentle with myself, but I did get back fairly quickly. I got back to climbing within a few weeks, just pretty mellow, what I would consider mellow climbing. And then skiing, we actually had the best season of snow. Like basically my Arrow was born and it just started snowing in Tahoe and it like didn't stop snowing. And it was essentially like the biggest winter of our lives. And so there was a lot of stoke around skiing. And I definitely pushed it on that front. I went skiing, I think like 10 days after giving birth. And it was,
whoa, good effort.
Yeah, it was like, yeah. And granted it was like pretty mellow, it was relatively mellow, relatively shorter days, but I did get back really quickly. And that's actually where I got the most negativity on social media and all of that from other moms and other women, was like, you're going back too fast, like you're going to ruin your uterus, like all of these, like, again, just like random things that were a little bit insulting. And that was kind of the hardest, honestly, with people telling me that I like shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And I was like, I'm just trying to, feel sane and like do my thing. And I have a baby and I'm just figuring it out. Just like everyone else. Yeah, that was an interesting one, actually. I got a lot of negativity for like climbing too soon or skiing too soon, all of those things. But, ultimately, you got to do what feels good.
That side of things that you got more criticism.
Yeah, it was. It was surprising. I think that's why it affected me, is I was a little caught off guard. Because I was like, wait a minute. Like, why is everyone telling me what I should be doing? After I have a baby.
Yeah, definitely.
But I don't know. I think there's this whole, I get it. Like, I actually kind of get it. I think there's a whole, like, getting back and getting your body back. And there's like this whole, culture behind that. And maybe I think there's this idea that as, female professional athletes, like coming back really soon, perpetuates that ideal and puts pressure on women and all of that. But I was just trying to do what felt good. And I'm naturally someone who's going to push it.
Yeah, and also I think as a community, we have to understand that there's a range of experiences. There's a range of birth experiences. There's a range of postpartum experiences and all of those things. And there's so much complexity that goes into how you feel postpartum that there is going to be this range of when people go back and when people feel safe and comfortable going back.
Yeah,
and it should be acceptable at either extreme of that, really, and anywhere in the middle.
Yeah, but I do kind of understand, like, if you had a really traumatic birth and it was really hard postpartum physically to get back, I think that there can be some sort of like a little bit of, I don't know what the word is, like resentment or kind of like a little bit of, yeah, just kind of feeling shitty when you see other women kind of getting back at it really quickly. I think because there is such a wide range of experiences and it is so emotional and you're kind of going through so much, I think that when you're struggling, it can be hard, you know, to see on social media when it looks like someone is having an easy time, which, you know, it wasn't easy. Nothing is, it's not easy raising a child and having a newborn and being postpartum, but sometimes I think you can kind of gather that from that tiny little sliver of social media that you see.
Yeah, it's that classic Instagram highlights issue, isn't it? We don't see the full picture. Yeah.
Which maybe I could have done a better job of telling the full picture, but I didn't feel terrible after giving birth. Like I was more or less just, I think, middle of the road, normal.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you a bit about body image, because you've openly discussed kind of body image previously on podcasts, and of course there was the film Light, directed by Caroline Treadway, that you took part in, and how did that kind of history of feelings and behaviors interact with your experience postpartum? Because obviously it's a time of like huge bodily change. I mean, I remember after my son, I was like, oh, I still look 6 months pregnant, but there's no baby in there anymore. And things change really rapidly. But, you know, I certainly felt like my body was really alien to me. And there was certainly a bit of like, whoa, what's going on here? And what does the future look like?
Yeah, it was hard. It was really hard. I thankfully had this little crew of women who were going through it pretty much at the same time as me, or, you know, they were 6 months ahead of me. And we have this little WhatsApp group that we were kind of chatting on. And it was really helpful to have that support, to be able to talk about those things, to be able to be really vulnerable and be like, my body feels totally different. I don't know if it's ever going to be back to how it was before. I miss it. Like, you know, I'm really struggling. And it was just kind of, it was hard. It was really hard. I think as an athlete, it's really hard to kind of, even though, you know, you can say all the right things, like female bodies are amazing and we are amazing and we do amazing things and postpartum is this amazing time, but multiple things can be true at once. It was this beautiful, magical time, but it was also really hard emotionally and physically, and just hard to feel not like myself. And I think one thing that I really underestimated was the whole like breastfeeding process and how hard that would be and how taxing and how time consuming and how sort of like trapped I would feel by it. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in those early days where it can be like, you know, periods of cluster feeding and just it can feel like you say, a mixture of this amazing bonding experience and just like overwhelming at the same time.
Totally overwhelming. And so much. It's so much. Yeah, I really underestimated it.
Yeah. And actually, you mentioned on social media that you stopped breastfeeding quite recently. Was it November 2023?
Yeah,
so quite recently.
I think end of October, was when it was kind of, it just natural. I wanted to go a whole year, but Arrow was kind of not as into it anymore. And it was, you know, getting to the point where I just wasn't breastfeeding him very often. It was like maybe a few minutes every day. And it just kind of naturally tapered off, which I think was, again, like a very fortunate process. Like we were both sort of over it. And it totally changed everything. My body changed, my brain changed, like my energy levels changed, everything shifted. And it was kind of crazy because I kind of just had accepted that I think I almost didn't remember what it was like to not be pregnant or postpartum or breastfeeding. It's kind of like 2 years. And I didn't realize how tired I was and how much energy I was expending. And it was just this crazy realization of, oh my God, like I kind of feel like I used to feel, I think, but that was so long ago.
Yeah, it's like you're recognizing this old version of yourself or your energy levels that suddenly comes
so
knocking
funny.
And you're like, oh, that was missing.
Yeah. I didn't even remember that was missing. I just thought I was I just thought this is how I am. Like this is who I am. This is what it's going to be like. And then as soon as I stopped, I think all women have a very different experience with breastfeeding and with stopping breastfeeding. And for me, it was this dramatic shift.
Mm. Yeah, I've certainly heard that, and that there can be quite an emotional, like, come down almost as well from the kind of hormonal
Yeah,
changes.
yeah, and I didn't experience that, but I've had friends that were like really terrified to stop breastfeeding because they got so much like serotonin from the act of
Mm,
actually breastfeeding. But that wasn't me. Um, so when I quit, it was just like I just felt like I had more energy and I felt like I had my
mm,
body back in a way.
mm. Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting. It's amazing how such a kind of like a biological process can be so varied for different people. Just like some women are like horrifically sick for 9 months when they're pregnant, and some
Yeah,
women feel great. Like you'd think that there would be a bit more like like of a
consistency.
standard
Yeah,
experience, yeah, which makes the
totally.
whole
And I
thing
guess
really
yeah,
hard because you don't
it
know what you're
does because
committing
it's
to.
hard. You don't know what you're gonna get, and then you don't know what kind of kid you're get like what kind of infant or newborn you're going to have. And I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned is you cannot compare what you're going through to what anyone else is going through or what they will go through. Or if you
Mm,
have another and go through a second pregnancy, that also could be completely different than the first. So I
yeah.
think the biggest lesson I learned through all of this is to just never compare.